An easy play. Fresh dress, living large, German whips in my garage. Most my partners called the charge for all this love break out the bars. Fresh dress, living large, German whips in
Here's
my
Messi.
garage.
Away from 2, 3, 4. Wonderful.
These chicks be flocking.
Hey, welcome, guys. It's Walter Waddell back with another edition of the CBB Super Show, the non-blog talk radio edition. Fantastic. A lot of you guys have been asking for the no blog talk radio, so we had to come through. We're doing Twitch streams now, so you guys can do the live chat. We're going to be doing Discord chats, all kinds of stuff. With my home now, your fielder's choice. Joined by a new face for some of you, but an old face for others. Pete Cole. This guy's a legend in the industry. Pete, how you doing, man?
What's up, Walt? How's everything going?
I have to fix my sound. It wouldn't be a first show without you. So
You're good now.
okay. All right, cool.
You're good.
All right. We got that logo there in the middle, boys. You see the Walt and Pete CB Super Show. We did a lot of hard work. Not us personally, but we told the people to do some hard work on it. It looks really good, so we're excited for that. Man, just feels good to have college basketball back. A lot of naysayers and people said, that this wasn't going to happen. Games were canceled, PPD. There's just too much stuff going on. We're not going to have it. But tomorrow we finally have a season. Somebody in the chat said COVID be damned for sure. So we're having an early slate. It's 5 games now. On FanDuel's having a main slate, 5 games. And then the DraftKings main slate is, I believe now, 12 games? So lots of stuff to cover. We are going to go game by game as we usually do with CBB, a little different than the college football format that we do for you guys. So we are going to start with the early slate. You guys can use the chat box on the side there in the stream. If you have any questions, feel free to ask those. I know you guys that have been listening to me since 2014. You guys are used to calling in and doing things and personalities like Johnny, all fun and games, but we're all about making that money this season. So I definitely want you guys to get used to the stream chat and the live discords that we're going to be doing. So let's get right on to it and start off with the early slate. This whole Twitch thing is very new to us, me personally. So if you guys are going to, do some donations or some bits or give out some, subscriptions, that would be great. All right, so first game on the slate we have on the early slate is St. Mary's versus Memphis. Man, we got college basketball. This feels awesome. KenPom projection on this Memphis-St. Mary's game is 71-67. Memphis tempo ranking right now is 12th, and St. Mary's 354, so nothing different there. St. Mary's typically a slow-paced team under Randy Bennett. They're going to play that same way. And under Penny Hardaway from Memphis, they're going to be a fast-paced team.
Who's the best player in the world?
Typically how it is.
So
basically,
who's the best player of all time?
We're going to talk about a couple of plays that we like for each. St. Mary's, they've lost quite a bit. Jordan Ford's gone. They lost 72% of their scoring with Malik Fitz, Tanner Krebs. It's a lot to lose. So guys like Logan Johnson, a Cincinnati transfer, Dan Fotu, Tommy Kusi, Alex Dukas, all these names are going to have to step up for St. Mary's. All fine and dandy. I don't have a ton of interest in St. Mary's right off the bat. There is a name I do want to mention who is at 3K only because I know him, being a Washington resident. Mullins, he is a 3K guard. He's the #1 prospect in all of Washington State, led his team in Mount Si to a 4A state title, which is the highest state title in the state. He is somebody who is going to be an impact player right away. As far as his minutes go, it's hard to say. But Bennett does say out of all the newcomers, he is the most ready to go. He did turn down offers from Stanford, Oregon State, and Washington State. So that really speaks to, how much Randy Bennett can do recruiting. He's actually got another recruit from Washington too, pilfering all of our recruits. So that's the guy I like for St. Mary's. And then on the Memphis side of things, they lost James Wiseman, barely played for them anyways, and Precious Achua. 2 guys that everybody's freaking out about. They also lost Tyler Harris to transfer. He's over to Iowa State now. But they still get a lot of players back. Landers Nolly from Virginia Tech has transferred to them. He has a waiver to play immediately. And then they've got, Boogie Ellis, Lester Quinones, DJ Jeffries, who is a guy that I have on my Dynasty League team. Little banged up, Damian Bow, and a couple of other guys like that. The one player, though, that is very mispriced on DraftKings, because DraftKings has gone ahead and priced some guys at very high level. Like DJ Jeffries here is priced at 8.5, which is a love guy. We were getting him at 6.5, 6.2, 6.3 a lot last year. Probably not going to pay 6.5 for him. So the guy that I want to look at, and we did some practice, so we won't butcher names this time. Musa Cisse at 5.7. Very reasonable price for a kid that is coming in out of high school as a big time recruit. He averaged 18.4 points per game, 15.3 rebounds per game. Yeah, those are nice stats. But how about the 9.2 blocks per game in high school? And I realize that's in high school, but still, anytime you get a kid that's protecting the rim like that, blocking 9 shots a game, that's a really big deal. So at 5.7, Cisse is the guy that I'm certainly looking at for my core cash lineups, whatever you want to call it, main lineups, what I like to refer to it. And he is my favorite play from this game. So there is a lot of other players in this game as well. Is there anyone I didn't mention, or do you want to hit on Cisse as well that you like?
Well, first of all, I've gotten like 7 DMs about my beard color, so we get the point. I'll go with the higher ups. It needs to be grayer, I guess. So, I have 1, 2, 8. I got 8 DMs now. Yes, I mean St. Mary's. This is like a rare thing for St. Mary's because it seems like every year they have some kind of a all WCC guy coming back and or like a digit score. But this year Jordan Ford's gone. He was one of my favorite college basketball players. Tommy Kuhs is the only guy returning. That pretty much that log to go over 25 minutes. I like Jake Mullins, like you said. I mean, he turned down all kinds of Pac-12 offers to go there. So I mean, I think he's in play GPP at 3.3. Matthias Tass, he's probably the new go-to guy. He went out with ACL last year. I mean, he can be an impact player, GPP, I guess, and that's pretty much it. Lynette Blockler, freshman, but on Memphis, actually, well, Malik Fitz, he left last year. He was one of our favorites last year's CBC season. He burnt us a few times, you remember, right? At the end of the season. He had one bad game and we all got off him. Then he burned us the next day. We had a huge game. But that's last year. Memphis, Musa Cisse is definitely in play at 5.7. He's a core play, I think. I mean, if everything I see, he's going to be playing right away. He's going to be another one of these one-and-done players. I mean, he might not be a Wiseman or a Precious, but he's still a shot swatter. He's still a 5-star guy. I mean, at 5.7, you got to play him. I like DJ Jeffries, but the price is too high, 8.5. I mean, before Cisse was here, Hardaway was pretty much looks like he was going to base a team around Jeffries this year. I mean, he looked good last year before his season ended injury, but 8,500. I don't know where they came up with that. And then prices Cisse at 5.7. So Jeffries can be in play, but GPP only. Anybody else? Lester Keone is 5.7. He's probably more consistent last year. I mean, Boogie he never really broke out. And 5.4, I guess you can play him. I'd rather play Keone's at 5.7. And Landers Nolly. Landers Nolly is 7,300. I guess, he's in play. So he had a good year last year, 15.8 as a freshman. So if anything, Cisse is in play, and probably Landers Nolly is like a main GPP type. And Mullins, I guess, 3.3, you got to. I mean, Mullins is pretty much playing, right? Everything I've seen, he's going to get the minutes, correct?
Well, yeah. I mean, we'll have to see. I'm not a Dookie. They're giving me a hard time calling me a Dookie. I hate Duke. This is a Florida State Trent Forrest jersey. My man Kurt got it for me, so shout out to Kurt Jones if he's watching. So Mullins is going to be a part of the rotation right away. I don't know if he's going to draw the start. He's certainly way more offensively gifted than a guy like Tommy Kuhse, who's more of a an assist guy, kind of limited on what he can do offensively. So he should get minutes right away. But as far as how many, it's really tough to say. Bennett loves the kid though, so I do like him. I'm hesitant to use him in cash. There's one other min price guy that I really like. If I didn't have that option, I may consider it, but right now I think he's in the player pool for sure.
Agree.
All right. Next game is Drake versus Kansas State. KenPom has projected 70-64 in favor of Kansas State. No surprise, tempo ranking for them is 277th. Drake 163rd. Kansas State is historically a very slow, ugly team. I read a really smart piece on Kansas State that said, if fans, 4 years ago, if Kansas State fans had somebody come to them and say, hey, you're going to make the NCAA tournament for a couple years, stop Kansas's endless Big 12 streak, but you're going to suck for the next 2 to 3 years, would you do it? And most people, I think, for Kansas State would say yes. So right now they're in that stage of they're going to have some bad years, and this is going to be another bad year. So they'll probably wind up beating a team like Drake, but Drake's not a team to sleep on necessarily. They're only projected to be fourth or fifth in their conference, but they have some guys on their team that can definitely score. Roman Penn is the one that I do want to highlight for them. Priced just at 6'3". He's a guy that average-wise last year averaged 12 points, 4.7 rebounds, 5.6 assists, and 1.3 steals per game. So a little bit of everything. One nice thing about Roman is that he is peripheral. So like when the tournament, he kind of showed out and he scored a lot and they did what he needed to, but his peripherals make him a very strong player. He's somebody that was top 10 in the nation in assists, had a 40% assist rate, shot 40% from long range, usage rate of right around 24%. I'd expect that to go up with some of the guys that they lost last year. So the price for him is relatively cheap. He really should be somewhere between 7.5 for what you can expect him to be. So he's a guy to definitely probably lock in at 6'3". They are facing, like I said, a hard-nosed, slow-paced Kansas State team, but I just think he's going to do enough to pay that price. I am interested in Seton Hall transfer Darnell Brody. He received a waiver. He's 6'10", 285-pound guy. He should be filling the Liam Robbins role right away. Robbins transferred over to Minnesota, as most people know. So that's a kind of a big hole for them to fill. He's not going to be anywhere near the offensive juggernaut that Robbins was, but he will be a rim protector and a rebounder like he was. Coach DeVires has indicated that Tremel Murphy and DJ Wilkins will be impact starters from day one. They don't really excite me very much, so I think that's speak. I also got UW grad transfer Tank Hemphill. Some people know him as Shanquan, but Tank Hemphill in the DFS community. He'll be in the mix for some big minutes. He's been getting a lot of hype in the offseason practices and whatnot, but he's been struggling with injuries like his whole entire career. The one season that he was healthy out of 4, he averaged 12 points, shot 53% from the field. So it can be done if he stays healthy and, maybe realize some of his potential. So the Drake side of things is pretty interesting to me. Kansas State, not so much. Why don't I turn to you and you tell us a little bit about Kansas State?
Yeah, I can't stand. I don't like Kansas State. I think they're a terrible DFS team. I've been burned too many times by Xavier Sneed and DR and all those guys. I'm playing nobody on this team really tomorrow. I mean, you got Mike McGurl, I guess. 7'5", I think is too expensive. He's a 3-point shooter. I mean, to me, but he's a role player. But they got to get points, I guess, somewhere, right? Now that Sneed's gone, I mean, I guess it'd be McGurl. I mean, he does. I mean, he's got decent. He shoots almost 40% from the 3. 7.5s are too much. Dajuan Gordon, we used him a little bit last year, 6,200 when he was cheaper. Played all his games last year as a freshman. I guess he's solid though, 6 points a game. There's nobody in this whole Kansas State team I would even play for. You got the 6'11" Lingard, right? I mean, from Temple College transfer. He's got some potential, but we don't know where he's going to go yet. But anybody in this game, like I said, I'm in love with Roman Penn. I think he's a core play for Drake. That price, Siena transfer there. I mean, I'm a big New York guy, so I mean, came from Siena. He was third team All NBC though last year. Assist leader. I'm in love with Roman Penn, so he's gonna be in all my lineups. And if you just remember last year's game they upset who was it, Northern Iowa, I think it was, in the quarterfinals, and he had like 26 points, 8 or 9 assists. That was a big game. That's when I really like Roman Penn. I really started paying attention to him. So he's a good player. And he's going to be most of my main lineups tomorrow. KC, K-State, nope.
Yeah, K-State's a tough team to target. That price on McGurl was an instant LOL for me. The only guys I do want to highlight, and they're not really playable in your cash games or anything, but Nigel Pack is their prize freshman recruit. They did a good job of price. It's weird because Pack is as good as Cisse on paper. They priced him at almost $7K, and then Cisse they priced at 5.7. So I'm not sure how they came to that arrangement. So it makes it hard to roster Pack, but he is going to be a good player this year. And then if you want a kind of a tournament sneak that won't be that owned, Rudy Williams, he's 4'4", number 4 JUCO prospect for Kansas State. He led the NJCAA, which is the JUCO, in assists last season. Kind of that prototypical gritty point guard that Bruce Weber likes in his programs. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him start right away. But, don't consider him somebody that you have to play or anything like that. It's just kind of a trickier play, I guess. All right, Maine and Virginia is off the slate, so we don't have to talk about that. My lovely dog is in the background making noise. So sorry, that's kind of her trademark every time we're on the air now. Western Kentucky versus Northern Iowa. This is the game of the slate right here, pretty much. There's a couple of nice ones with Bowling Green and whatnot, but this one's a really good target because we have, a close spread. Ken Palm thinks it's going to be 71-70 in favor of Northern Iowa. They have a 338th tempo ranking. Western Kentucky 188th. Lots to like in this one. Obviously, when you look at it, the very first thing that anyone who has at all played, CFB or CBB, and has, played with a slate with Western Kentucky is going to look at this and say, wait a second, Charles Bassey 5'4", what is that about? Really underpriced. I know he had a severe injury, a tibia, like 10 years this year. I was on his way with a near double-double, just crushing it. Was going to be definitely entering the NBA if he didn't get hurt. So I guess it's kind of lucky for WKU that he's going to return. But 5'4" is just way too cheap for him. Even coming back from an injury, if he does half of what he normally does at this price, he's still a fantastic lock. And I'm going to guess he's going to be very popular. Now that the slate is down to 5 games, it just doesn't make sense to fade him. And then on the Northern Iowa side, AJ Green is 8K. We have all these mispriced guys. We talked about Penn at 6'3", Cisse at 5'7". Now you've got Bassey there under 6K, which is ridiculous. So those 3 guys, you're going to have to pay up for somebody. For me, it's AJ Green at 8K. He's just a high usage guy. He's also the cover boy. For those of you that don't play DFS to this effect with CBB as your first year, it's not the Bengals wide receiver. This is the white AJ Green, as we call him. The reigning MVC player of the year, widely considered to be the favorite to win it again. He has a 30% usage rate last year, 32% shot rate. Also shot 91% from the foul line. If Johnny was here, he would be saying right on. And a 39% three-point shooter. So really one of the few 8K plus players on the slate that I would be locking into most of my lineups. He's the one I'm most comfortable playing. And now that we got the news that Trey Burhow, who's kind of their number 3 scorer, the lethal three-point shooter, didn't make the trip because of COVID protocol, he's going to get even more usage. You could say, hey, there's guys on this roster that, are going to be starting and get some additional usage. That's fine and all. If we were on a slate where everybody was overpriced and we needed value, then I'd probably be more interested in something like that. But right now, for me, it's just going to be locking in AJ Green, maybe a little bit of GPP shares of Austin Fife. But everyone else on Northern Iowa doesn't really excite me. Ton of plays on Western Kentucky. I do want to give you something to talk about, so I'm going to kick that over to you and tell us a little bit more about this game.
All right. Yeah, this is a good game. This is probably the best game of the slate, I think. And it all on Western Kentucky. It all starts with Charles Bassey. That price. 5,400. This guy's preseason second team All-America. He actually, I didn't realize he's the nation's active career rebounding leader. He's on Naismith's watch list. But man, 5,400. He's got to be in your core. 56% field goal. He gets almost 25% of the team's rebounds. He's an elite rim protector, so he's in there. You don't have to talk too much about him. But the other guy I like is Tavion Hollingsworth at 7,100. I can see him making a main lineup. He's all CUSA preseason. He's the type of guy. He's a dynamic scorer. He's at his best when he's like driving downhill. His layups, he draws fouls like crazy. He draws like 5 fouls a game. Worth is definitely, he's only like 5 or 6 points shy, 1,500 points too. And if I remember right, he leads the nation in active starts or some crazy thing too. So Hollingsworth's in play. Charles Bassey's a core play. AJ Green, you're right, is a core play too. 8-1, you got to go somewhere, but these crazy low price guys. Then there's some high price guys shouldn't even be in the same ballpark. But AJ Green, yeah, he's gonna be the first back-to-back guy since Dougie McDermott, I think, to win Player of the Year in the MVC. So, and Austin Fife, I believe Fife's a GPP play also. He had almost 10 points a game last year. But Bassey, Hollingsworth, and Green are my plays in this game.
Yeah, and then a couple others on Western Kentucky. Kenny Cooper is there at 5'2". He was the Lipscomb starting point guard a couple of years ago. He's now eligible. I think he would probably slide into that role immediately. He had a 28.8% assist rate in the 2018-2019 season. Averaged right around 10 points per game, almost 5 assists. So not an outrageously gifted high upside type of play, but he is there at 5'2" if you need somebody, if you're looking for a little bit of leverage on the field. There is talk of Jordan Rawls, second-year player, to potentially start at point guard. He was an 8-point scorer last year, but I think Cooper, they brought him in from Lipscomb. Denied a waiver last year. They wanted him to play right away. I think he's going to be a big part of what they do. So I'm with you on the Hollingsworth play. He is ending up as a second kind of pay up if I want to get a second guy in here. And then Josh Anderson and Carson Williams are probably in play, but they're kind of in weird prices, especially Carson Williams. He's priced like he was with Basie out. Now that Basie's back, his numbers are going to kind of suffer a little bit. All right, let's go. And if you guys have any questions over in the Twitch chat, go ahead and please put those over there. There's a couple people trolling. Oklahoma State versus Texas A&M. Ken Palm has a 76-65 in favor of Oklahoma State. Tempo rankings for Oklahoma State 177, Texas A&M 226. I'm sorry, not Texas A&M, Texas Arlington. This is another game, a lot to like. However, the pricing on things is a little bit, I guess I don't want to say ridiculous. It's what I thought it would be for Cade Cunningham at 9.5. Perhaps maybe starting him off at 9K would have been a little bit more reasonable. He's going to be a guy that is not to the level of Zion Williamson in terms of every time you roster him, you're gonna, if he doesn't get hurt, he's going to score you 40 plus fantasy points. There is a really good chance for Cade to do this. Highly rated kid coming out. Had all the G League offers. He had all these other offers. Oklahoma State is not eligible to make the tournament. A lot of people thought he was going to bail, but Oklahoma State did this thing kind of popular in college where a team hires a kid's brother to be a coach or a family member to be a coach. So, he stayed, whatever. The other guys on this team from Cal Baptist, Ferron Flavors, he's at 6'6". He was somebody that I might have considered back in the old style of pricing where he might have been like 4'5", 3 years ago. 6'6" is way too high for a guy that relies on 3-point shooting only. And then you got Isaac Lekela, who at 8'9", he's used to being the number one option, going to be playing second fiddle to Cade. He needs to come way down on his pricing before I consider using him. Everybody else on the Cowboys is kind of second and third options. The Boone brothers, Anderson, Harris, these are all guys we used at different points last season to try to get value. They were kind of horrible. They should be better this year playing next to Cade Cunningham, but still not anyone that I'm really interested in. Oklahoma State's defense is pretty suspect, so I'm looking over on the Arlington side of things. Another, kind of key player that's underpriced is David Azor at 5'9". Now, he is the player, in that Roman Penn group, Cisse group, where he's playable as they are. But for me, I'm finding him to be the third or fourth guy in that group. So he may not necessarily make my main lineup. If anyone presents me with a core or says, hey, what about David Azor? I'm going to say yes because he's a very good play. And he's a guy that is going to lead this team. They lost 2 of their 3 best scorers last season. Azori's the best guy back, returning with 14 points per game, kick under 5 rebounds, an all second team Sun Belt performer, 26% usage rate, 25% shot rate. He also had a 28% assist rate. So he does a little bit of everything. And now, like I said, Brian Warren's gone. It's kind of all his show. Now, if I don't use him, there is a player that I'm not slowly, it's kind of happening quick, that I'm really high on. Shahada Wells. He's the number 12th ranked JUCO transfer. Okay, doesn't sound that great, but he's only 3K. He projects to be the team's starting point guard immediately. One of the better values. If you take a look at some of his stats, he does shoot a mouth-watering 46% from long range. Pretty exciting. 21.6 points per game and 6 assists per game. And he had the first team all NJCA America. And he just kind of puts up a little bit of everything. Now in JUCO, I know that it's not as exciting, but you hear every year, guys like Alonzo Verge was a JUCO player, 2 years ago, and he burst on the scene and killed it for ASU. Every year, there's a ton of JUCO guys who are very viable, very productive, and burst on the scene and do well. So the fact that he's 3K is very appealing to me. If he was like 6 or 7K or something, probably wouldn't be having this conversation. So I think he's somebody that's going to end up being pretty close to a main lineup use for me. If I was going to use him or Mullins, I would probably certainly use Wells. Now, this is contingent upon him starting. If it comes out, that he doesn't get to start and someone like Sam Griffin or, they go big with Grayson Carter, Jordan Phillips, these type of guys, then maybe we don't use him. But I just don't see him not starting at point. The coaches love him. Perfect kind of compliment to Azor, kind of get him off the ball a little bit. He has a true blue high scorer next to him. Assist rate should be very high. So I really like him. So that's my guy in this game, Shahada Wells. Azoria as well. And then, like I said, if you want to go and pay up for Cade Cunningham, I certainly wouldn't talk you out of it. But there's kind of a lot here. Break it down for us.
All right, he keeps freezing on me. I'm here now. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I don't know if it's me or you. I keep losing you. No, can you hear me?
Okay, sorry guys. We're just going to go ahead and reset real quick. I know we have over 100 of you watching. I really appreciate that. So we're going to reset.
Is that better?
All right.
All right. Sorry about that. You can hear me now?
Yeah.
I took mine off Wi-Fi. I'm on cellular. All right. I'm sorry.
It's all good.
All right. So I think you pretty much went through Arlington. My only plays were David Azoria, like a 5'9" we already went over. And if anything, also Sam Griffin, to $4,000 of value. I think he's, third leading scorer last year, but I like your Shadada Wells play. I think Wells is actually going to be a good value play tomorrow. But that's all I have for that game. I think David Azoria is a really good play at 5,900.
All right. Cruising right along. Next game and last game on this early slate, we have Bowling Green versus Michigan. Ken Palm's projection on this is 83.65 in favor of Michigan. 140th tempo ranking for them. Bowling Green quite fast, 71st in tempo ranking. There is a lot to like in this game, too. Kind of keeping up with the trend of mispricing. It's especially prevalent on this early slate. You look at a guy like Justin Turner at 5'3", Pete, or even Daquan Plowden at 4'9". You played last year, and I know you did. You remember Bowling Green slates. These two guys were 6K, 7K, high contributors. They only lost Dylan Fry, who was pretty much their second, scorer behind Turner, sometimes behind Plowden. Those two guys coming back, that's a big deal. Michigan defense is probably going to end up being quite well as we get through here. But, with these teams not practicing and not having a full offseason, it's not like they're going to shut Bowling Green down. So it's going to be really hard to get away from Turner and Plowden. Would you agree?
Definitely. Do the two main plays. With Turner's 5,300 and Plowden's only $400 cheaper. Turner's got to be in every one of your lineups, I think. They didn't even think he was going to return this year. So he was actually the number one rated grad transfer. Get him in all your lineups. Plowden, second team all MAC, second returning rebounder. He had like a huge increase from his sophomore to junior year. He doubled his scoring and his rebounding. Both of those guys. I know he's saying a bunch of locks, but it seems like in this slate, there's like guys that you either lock him in. It's gonna be. I think it's gonna be fairly easy to cash game to build. It's Michigan. There's no locks on this Michigan team. I know a lot of people are in love with Franz Wagner. He's probably the best NBA prospect in the Big Ten, but he's a good stretch forward. But still, are you going to pay $9,100 for Franz Wagner? He was one of our brand favorites last year. He won us a lot of money last November, but he's still. I just think it's a lot of money. If I'm going to take anybody from Michigan, I'm probably going to take maybe. I think Livers is even too expensive too. So I'm probably going to stay away from Michigan. I like this kid Hunter Dickinson at 5,600. The Maryland Player of the Year. He came from DeMatha Catholic, which is a big high school program. I think he's the type of guy that can step in and replace John Teskey, but that's the GPP play. So this game is Turner and Plowden. That's it for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it comes down to with Wagner that, ordinarily we don't want to pay 9-1 for a guy that we were consistently getting at 4-7 and 5K. I rostered Wagner a lot last year,
Yes,
and when I was with my other site, and you too, we were on him every slate. I didn't care. Even if he busted, it's like, well, I'm going right back to him. But it comes down to, Turner, Penn, Cisse, all these guys are so cheap that we're going to end up having to spend salary. And it looked like it was going to be Sam Howard from Virginia for a lot of us. But now that game's gone. it's, you know, 100, that price range is now Franz Wagner. So I do think he may end up becoming popular just because people have the salary to use. There is a chance people just try to figure out how to go up to Cade Cunningham instead, which is viable. But I think that, yeah, Wagner is perfectly fine just because you got to spend the money somewhere. Ordinarily, if we didn't have all this value and missed prices like we do, and I 100% agree, it wouldn't even be a conversation. Now, they do have a couple of transfers that have come in as well, in addition to the freshman that you mentioned. Shonde Brown from Wake Forest, he got his waiver. You know, he's a 12-6 guy last year. He is 7-2, so he's an interesting tournament guy. And then Mike Smith as 4-8, who comes over from Columbia. People that played last year know I was really high on him too. Now, his role from Columbia is going to be a lot different. He's not going to be this, you know, 35% usage guy, taking every single shot, having to score every time. You know, he's going to be a bench player. He's going to come in for instant offense and not really be relied upon to do much else. The defense is kind of trash, so there's a good chance that he won't get that many minutes anyways in the Big Ten. But he is a guy that, you know, if he was like 3.5, I think we'd be talking about a little bit more. But just going to kind of throw that out there because a lot of people are already asking me like, oh, shoot, Mike Smith, he's 4.8. Is he a lock? Well, if it was Columbia Mike Smith, hell yeah. But it's Michigan Mike Smith, so not quite the same level of player there. And then you got guys like Eli Brooks, Isaiah Livers, Brandon Johns, all coming back, but none that really excite me from a DFS perspective. So
that's a good point.
That
you make
is,
that Smith too, because a lot of people have asked me that too, because we all won money on Mike Smith last year, 2 or 3 games, and you're right, it's a different type of player. And yeah, he's probably GPP play, but we just don't know what his role is going to be. He's not going to be out there shooting like, you know, like he was in the Ivy League. Still, I mean, it's not the same Mike Smith. I mean, you're right. It's a very good point.
All right, so that kind of wraps up the early slate there. Like we said, it's a really easy slate to kind of build. I think it's going to end up being a lot of 2v2 and 3v3. It's just really unavoidable. I would suspect the rest of the industry is going to be on that same kind of core group as us. So let's go over to the main slate here and get started. Now, FanDuel also has a slate that's 5 games. Everything is the same for the 4 games that they have that match, but they also went ahead and put Rhode Island ASU. So we're going to add that game to our talk here, and that'll be a FanDuel focused thing. So that'll be towards the end of the stream when we're wrapping up with the rest of the games. So those of you that play FanDuel, I do want you to know we're not ignoring you. We're just going to have that game here towards the end. Liberty versus Purdue is the first game on the slate here for main slate DK. It looks like the time on some of these games may be off, so be advised when you guys are building lineups that the DK time for lock may end up being different. So don't mess around and make a mistake. Make sure you check their time, not the game time it says on your box scores. Liberty projection here, 57 versus Purdue 71. Both two slow-paced teams projected, 356 tempo ranking for Liberty, 322 for Purdue. Now, I know you did a lot of work looking on Purdue. This is a game that is very ugly to me. I typically will still look at the game, and I've got a few plays as well, but I want to hear your take first because I know that there was a couple of Purdue guys that you were talking to me about early, and it seems like you kind of have a read on the situation.
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, it looks like Eric Hunter's out, right? He's going to be out for a week or 2.
Yep.
So the first question is going to be, you got 2 guards, and they're both. First one is Isaiah Thompson. He's 5,400. He's a sophomore.
Who's the best player in the world?
He actually spelled Hunter a lot last year, stretches.
Who's the best player of all time?
5.5 points a game, 36% from 3-point range is not bad. He's actually PJ Thompson's little brother who played for Purdue. And if anybody doesn't know that, he had 36 3-pointers, which is the 3rd most at a freshman last year, only behind Franz and CJ Frederick. So Isaiah Thompson's in the mix. Or you can, now you got another guard here, Jaden Ivey, who is a little bit cheaper at 4.8, and he can actually play both guard spots. The thing I've been reading, it looks like Ivy's actually been running the guard spot in practice, in most of the Purdue practices. So I guess if you got to make a pick, it's a tough one. But I like the price, and I want to get one of them in here. It's just a matter of which one are you going to take. I mean, Thompson's got the experience. Looks like Ivy's been running it in practice. I mean, if you want to take the more proven guy, I guess you go with Thompson. Or, I mean, you take Ivy, I think is probably has the more, probably a little bit more upside. But once again, we're talking about Purdue guards here, so I don't know. I'm probably spending too much time on it as it is. But just know Eric Hunter's out, and these guys are pretty good values at that price. I mean, it's Purdue's slow pace, but And also, it also makes you think Ethan Morton is limited. He's a big time recruit from Pennsylvania. He's limited, so it looks like Ivy and probably Thompson both going to get more playing time because of that. So that's the guard situation. Trev Williams. I mean, if you're a DFS player, you know who Trevon Williams is. He's a double-digit threat every night. But once again, he's one of these guys in $9,000 range. There's a lot of guys in $9,000 range in this site, man. I'm just going to toss aside. I think there's way too much value on both the early and main, but we don't have to play guys like Tevon or Trevion because, to me, he's still a boomer bust. I mean, most of us guys that play DFS, we've been hurt by Trevion, but we've also won a lot of money with Trevion. Remember that last year? What was the game? I guess it was Michigan? I guess it was. He had 36 points and 20 rebounds that one night in last January. I won a lot of money that night. And then a week later, he had like 4 points and like 4 rebounds. So to me, Williams is a GBP play, but he is a double threat every night. Gets a lot of usage, 31%. Another guy I want to mention is Brandon Newman. He's a redshirt from last year. He was actually runner-up to Trace Jackson Davis for the Player of the Year in Indiana for Indiana Mr. Basketball, which is a pretty big honor. I'm not sure if he's in play, but it's just a GBP play. But anybody on that team has got to be T-Will, and he's where he said he's GBP. I'm not sure what you think about these guards, but I don't think they're cash plays. If anything, GBP values.
Yeah, Thompson is a guy who showed some flashes last year. He's a very good shooter. He gets more time on the floor now. He should really start to ball out a little bit. There was talk of Newman. I think he's still hurt. And then Jaden Ivey's out there, but Purdue's just it's not an exciting game. It doesn't look that great. I've been wanting Aaron Wheeler to be a thing for a long time. He's a little higher price for me at 5.7. He's had some opportunities here, and it just hasn't materialized. There is one player to look at there at 3K potentially with Zach Edey. He's been getting a lot of hype. There was some scrimmage highlights that were going on, and he was snatching rebounds left and right. If you could figure out or put a number on how many minutes you think he's going to get in this Liberty game, he could potentially pay off that 3K in rebounds alone. He's a 7'4" guy, I believe, so he's kind of continuing that trend of giant Purdue centers. Painter just has a thing for those guys. There you have it on Purdue. T-Will at 9.2 is a man. He's grown so much. I remember when he was like 4.2 and we were rostering him all the time and getting heated. So I can't even imagine at 9.
I was going to say that. He used to be in the mid-5s. But, I was just reading some notes here that Purdue was practicing with Edey and Williams in the same lineup, too. So at 3K, you could do much worse at that price. Definitely GVP. You can definitely take a flyer on that. He's a big kid. And they did it last year a little bit with Matt Harms. Matt Harms is like 7'2", 7'3". So, GVP only, but that's kind of a little value play throughout there. It's a good call.
Yeah. And then Liberty doesn't really interest it. I don't think anybody. The only 2 players really that you'd want to roster would be Elijah Cuffey at 4.9. He's kind of a mainstay, and then Darius McGee at 5.2. They call him Darius McThree over there at Liberty because of 3-point shooting ability. But yeah, nobody on Liberty is really exciting right now, and they lost a whole bunch of players. So let's go to Morehead State and Kentucky. KenPom projection on this is 83.57 in favor of Kentucky. Their tempo ranking is 194. Morehead State 214. This situation is slightly different. I had written up the Maine Virginia game, and I talked about Maine. They're all under 4K, but you don't want to use them because Virginia's slow. They're pack line defense. Blah blah blah. Morehead guys are really cheap, but I think they're playable even against Kentucky. They're going to get trounced, obviously, but if you need value, I'm not afraid to target some of these guys like I would be on Maine versus Virginia. The names you really would want to target would be Talon Cooper or Davon Cooper. Those are their 2 main scorers. They also have a transfer from East, KJ Hunt. Those 3 guys figure to be the kind of big minute guys. Joined in the starting lineup by James Baker and Tashawn Claude. So if you want to go that route, those are the 5 that I would choose from. But Talon Cooper and Davon Cooper are really the 2 that you would want to focus on. Kentucky, they've lost a lot. They just kind of reload, though. This is what they do. EJ Montgomery, Emmanuel Quickly, Nick Richards, Tyrese Maxey, the list goes on. Ashton Hagens, all gone. Nate Sestina gone. Johnny Juzang, we're going to talk about later. He's on UCLA now. All those guys are gone. Most programs would be in dire straits losing that kind of production, but not for a team that, a very, honest guy like John Calipari. He gets his recruits the right way every time. And the only returning player he has with experience is Keon Brooks. I'm still bent about Kentucky taking a guy from us a long time ago. So whatever. We took one back last year. But their only returning player is Keon Brooks, little used reserve. He's actually going to play a big role this year, but he has a nagging calf injury, so he's going to be out for a couple of games. So you can kind of wipe him away. Redshirt freshman that Dante Allen is the guy that I'm looking at. Kind of fly under the radar, very cheap. In high school, he averaged 43 points a game. So, and 14 rebounds, 3 blocks. And I know, again, that's in high school, but if a kid is averaging 43 points in the game, then obviously a gifted scorer, no matter who the opponent is, as long as it's not like a Christian school that has, grades 1st through 12 on him, and he's playing against third graders, which that didn't look like the case. He also 11th on the Kentucky high school scoring list with 3,200 points, 3,255, in fact. That number probably would have been higher, but he got hurt his senior year. So the fact that he got hurt his senior in high school, it led into his freshman year of college. That's why he had to redshirt. So he's coming back from that injury. Coach staff says he's all good to go. So he's the guy that I'm looking at kind of for GPPs. My cash plays in this game, and I have one mainly, McDonald's All-American BJ Boston. Boston is a really elite three-level scorer. If you need a three, he's going to hit it. You need a inside basket, you need him to drive, he can take his man off the dribble. Any of these things, BJ Boston is going to be that guy. Some of you guys are involved in season-long and dynasty leagues like me. I've gotten Boston in, I think, 2 or 3 of my 4 leagues. I've been grabbing him up everywhere I can. Typically, I don't like to touch Kentucky guys. They're typically deep. They have a large rotation. They've got 12 freshmen coming in always. You don't know what's going to happen. I'm very confident that Boston is going to be the man. He came under my radar kind of last year when he was on Sierra Canyon. He played with Bronny James, LeBron's son. There's your LeBron James shout out, Danny. And BJ Boston is playing with his son. Very elite scorer for them. Go-to guy. So he's used to playing with elite level talent and against them. So he's my guy. He's 7'2", which is very reasonable for him. I think he's going to end up being a mid-8 to maybe even 9K guy by the time it's all said and done. I do think, and listen to me carefully when I say this, because I'm not saying he's better than Tyler Hero. Hero's an outstanding shooter in the NBA, but when Tyler Hero was in college at Kentucky, he was a very inconsistent scorer. There were games where you couldn't buy a basket out of him. Trust me, I know. I had Mania tickets on the line with Hero, and he couldn't buy me a basket. And I think that Boston is going to be a much better scorer consistently than Hero is. The college version of Hero, before any of you NBA guys start getting up in arms. The college version of Hero, he's better than. So that's my guy for this one. And then Oliver Sarr, he got another Wake Forest transfer. He got his waiver, 14-9 guy. I don't think he should have too much issues. Kind of you come from the ACC to the SEC, maybe a little tougher defense, I guess. But I don't see him having too many issues adjusting too much. So those are my guys, Boston and Sarr, and then on the other side, Devon Cooper and Taylon Cooper. There are some other Kentucky guys to talk about, but I'll kick it over to you first to see if you hit on them, and then we'll circle back around.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think Boston and Sarr are both cash plays. And my hope, I think Sarr is definitely a cash play. I mean, he scored almost 14 points last year. Wake Forest, especially with Keon Brooks out, it's going to be more on the Sarr. My problem is with guys like Boston and Askew is, and I think this is where I get hurt a lot personally in DFS, is like I need them to show me consistently what they can do. And I know, Boston's the highest rated, the highest rated prospects, and all that, but I don't know. 7.2 is a good price though. I mean, I figured he'd be like in the high 8, so I guess he pretty is a straight cash player. Davion Mintz at 4,500. I think he's a decent value play, the Creighton transfer. I mean, last year, it's 2018, like 2018-19. I mean, he put up a line of 10-3-3 every night. If you can do that at 4,500, I have no problem playing him in a value spot. And I think that he can spell Askew, or he can even play over him. And Calipari is not afraid. Is not reluctant to play the 2 point guards like that, 2 guards. So I like Mintz. I like Terrence Clark a lot. I think he's the prototypical John Calipari wing. He's kind of long, athletic. He plays hard on both ends of the court. I mean, consensus top 10 guy. He can play the three. He also can play a 3-guard offense. So I think Terrence Clark. I like that price of Terrence Clark, 6'9". And one more play is how about Isaiah Jackson at 5,200? With now that we know Keon is out, I mean, I can see him playing alongside Star. He's a shot blocker, and it's a good way to get Kentucky exposure. I mean, it's gonna be a really high scoring game, and if he's only at 5,200, Jackson's good. All these guys are gonna play too. It's gonna be a lot of points scored. So, Mints, I like Jackson, and definitely your calls on Boston and Sar. You got to get. What do you think? Two Kentucky players in your lineup. I mean,
well,
Cash.
I don't know about that.
Boston, Sar, and Cash. I don't.
Maybe. I think Boston for sure. I think Boston for sure. Personally, if you're scared of going the freshman route, then I think you could go Sar. You're certainly not going to hurt yourself by going to Kentucky because those guys will soak up a lot of touches, usage, whatever. But I haven't tried to really build a main. Like I have an early lineup that I'm very confident in. Main set I haven't finished yet. So it's tough for me to say for sure, but it's definitely on the table. I like the men's call. I don't know how many minutes he's really going to get, but he's certainly in play. So it's a good call by you.
That's my biggest question is his minutes. But I just remember last year, I know Boston's a little bit different category than a freshman last year for Kentucky. I remember having the same conversation last year, and we were all in it. I'm not saying you, but I mean, I was all in on some of these Kentucky guys. And then the first few games, a lot of them, I think they opened up against Michigan State last year, if I remember right. And then a lot of them kind of flunked the first couple of games. It just scares me with these Kentucky freshmen. They come in heralded, and it takes them a few games to get going. But you're right. BJ at Boston is a little bit different player than the last couple of years. I mean, he's the real deal.
And that's where maybe people can feel comfortable and confident. And I'm not saying I'm the end all be all because I get a lot wrong too. But I wasn't on like Maxie and those guys last year. It took a lot for me to roster them. I would get beat by them because I would never roster them. Kentucky is a team I usually always avoid. I hadn't really rostered a Kentucky guy since Hero 2 years ago. So the fact that I'm and I'm scaring myself a little with this, the fact that I'm so high on BJ Boston and wanting to play him in my main lineup, it makes me feel, because he's just a different type of player. I feel like he's going to be just from the get-go right away, very consistent. And that's where the Heroes, the Maxies, those guys, they could pop off and go for 40, 50, but then they would do 18 and 20 and they just didn't have any consistency. So that's where I always got scared about Kentucky because they'd go 9, 10, 11 deep. But I just feel like Boston is a different breed, and at 7-2, I'm willing to take that chance. If he would have been priced at Cade Cunningham, I'd be saying, no, I'm too worried. But at 7-2, I feel like it's worth a shot. You mentioned Terrence Clark at 6'9". He's certainly in play. And then I said Dante Allen at 3'7". I think at tournaments he'll be low owned. I don't know. This is the kid that I'm excited to see. Boston too, of course. But Allen's just kind of one of those kind of sneakier plays that I want to see play and what he's all about. Next game here on the slate is College of Charleston versus North Carolina. Ken Palm has it 79-61 in favor of North Carolina. 42nd in Temple ranking, North Carolina fast, as always. College of Charleston, 328. This is a game that I first thought it was going to be pretty nice to target. North Carolina's got some nice pieces. I'll talk about Charleston, then we'll kick to you for North Carolina. They're going to start life without Grant Riller, superstar that he was. He averaged 22 points a game, very high usage. And so they're going to have to look to somebody to kind of start taking that. I think it's going to be an overall team effort. There's not one guy in their roster that's just going to come in and start doing what Riller did. They have Brevin Galloway, who's one of the top on-ball defenders in the country, really. Excuse me, ranked 14th in steals rate. He's a prime candidate to kind of absorb a lot of that offense, but his focus on defense makes me feel like he's not really going to be the guy. They do have Minnesota grad transfer Peyton Willis. He's only 4K. A lot of people don't even know he transferred to Charleston. It was kind of low-key. I mean, there were so many transfers this year. COVID stuff going on, so it's easy for a player like him to kind of go under the radar like this. But I think he's going to make a splash right away. He brings over an 8.6 point per game average, 3.5 rebounds, 2 assists. He's a pretty gifted three-point shooter. At times he was shooting 40+%. The dip in competition long-term from, the Big Ten to CAA is going to benefit him greatly. He's faced upper-tier competition, so I don't think, he'll fold in the moment facing a team like North Carolina, or maybe some of these other Charleston guys may be a little intimidated. He shouldn't be. He does have serviceable numbers, as we said. He's logged 2007 career minutes between Minnesota and Vanderbilt. He was on Vanderbilt for 2 years. People don't know that. So his experience should be really key for this Charleston squad. And like I said, this matchup against the Tar Heels isn't going to be easy by any means, but I think he's at 4K. He's really worth a look and borderline cash. Like I said, I haven't fully built a main slate lineup yet, but I have a feeling he's going to be a guy I look at. Other players that are in the mix for minutes but aren't really fantasy options: Zeb Jasper, he's burnt us in the past; Osinachi Smart, and St. Joe's grad transfer Lorenzo Edwards, who's another guy a lot of people don't know is over here in Charleston. So some of these guys have various level of GPP appeal, but really for me, it's mostly Peyton Willis. And then if you wanted to go Galloway, but he's really more of a defensive presence as opposed to a fantasy producer. You have any other Charleston guys that I didn't mention? And how about North Carolina?
No.
Their whole roster's turned over right now, basically, except for their post.
I mean, I like the Willis call 4,000. I mean, he only needs about 16 points to make value, so that's pretty good. And he can shoot. And I've been going back and forth with Brevin Galloway a lot, but I think he's a play though. 4,500. I think you can see a spike in scoring with one of the most prolific scorers in Colonial history gone now. So I think Galloway to me is a play. Main slate, I'm not sure yet, but I like him. But North Carolina, I like this team a lot, man. This for DFS purposes, and starting with the guards. I know everybody likes Caleb Love. Remember, the point guard for UNC is a DFS-friendly spot. I mean, Caleb Love comes in 8'3". He's not cheap, so he's more than BJ Boston. He's kind of a Kobe White clone, kind of what I look at. So he's definitely a cash play. But you know who I kind of like as a cash play is RG Davis. RG Davis is only he's a little bit cheaper at 6'4", so he's almost $2,000 cheaper. He's projected to start at the shooting guard they lost Cole Anthony, but I really don't think you're not going to miss much of a beat with Davis and Love. This guy comes in as a 4-star recruit, over 24,000 points in high school. I think both him and Love together can play them together, but I would have no problem playing RG Davis on my main lineup as a cheaper play of 6,400. So he's out of a cash value for me as a cash main value. Also, I mean, Garrison Brooks, we all know about Garrison Brooks. I mean, he's a double-double machine. I mean, he's probably 9,300. Is he worth it? Probably GPP, I guess. If he was 8.5, he'd be in my main lineup. I mean, he pretty much doubled his scoring from his last 2 seasons. He went from 8 points to 16 points, 5 rebounds, almost 9 rebounds. So Brooks is in play, and I also probably more in play actually as a cash play is Armando Bacos. So you gotta kind of sell me on this one at 6'9". Is he a cash play? Because man, I've been burned by him. I've been burned by him too. It seems like every time I play him, he gets hurt, or he'll have a good game and he'll just crush. And the next game he doesn't do much. But I know it's a different team. But who do you see as a cash play on this Carolina team? I mean, do you see Love and RG? Do you see RG Davis as a cash play?
Davis is tough for me to accept him as a cash play because I don't know what to expect usage wise. It is nice, not nice really, but it's nice for him that Anthony Harris is eternally banged up and not going to shed this injury tag, so he's out. So there is guard minutes to go around here. So Davis is in play. Bacot is a little tough at 6'9" because he has foul issues. Him and Garrison Brooks both, they can really go berserk early on and get you, 8 quick rebounds in 5 minutes, or they can pick up those 2 quick ones. So it's very difficult, as you guys know, in college basketball. One of the most frustrating things is that quick 2 foul auto bench by some coaches. So at 6'9", it's a little too much. I know he had times last year where he was in the upper 7K range. I'd say no right now.
They cannibalize each other too, the two of them. I see sometimes Brooks and Bacot. So that's why I don't see him as cash.
Yeah. I actually think that you could get away with running Leaky Black in cash at 6'3". He's a guy that I think is going to have a little bit of a breakout. He really stepped up. It's a bad year for North Carolina. Everybody knows they had injuries. Cole Anthony was being double and triple teamed at times. It's just once they had those injuries and everything, they were dead. They couldn't do anything about it. And young team, and that just happened. Black kind of, he had a nice productive season. There were games where he would put up, 25 fantasy points or more. He had averaged 6.5 points a game, 5 rebounds, right around 20 fantasy points. So, I think he should be able to step back into the starting lineup with Harris still kind of, banged up and whatnot, and play that wing spot and play it well. I think he's, everyone else on UNC is kind of a GPP for me, but Black, I don't know, it's just sticking out as the lone cash play for me on DraftKings. Now over on FanDuel, I know on FanDuel the pricing for Love is way better. He's priced at 5.2 there, which is an auto lock. So I did make when I was talking about FanDuel in the article and stuff, yeah, that's a completely different story. Caleb Love is an auto lock and a cash play on FanDuel by far, but then you can see 3K more on DraftKings where it's a little bit tougher of a decision. He is going to fill that Cole Anthony role right away. Very gifted player, typical Roy Williams guard that's going to do everything. He's actually being compared more to Kobe White, not Cole Anthony from a couple of years ago. And if he can do anything that Kobe White did, he's going to be a very productive fantasy player for us for the entire season. So yeah, over on FanDuel, he's the play there. But yeah, it's a very tough price because they're so inconsistent. DK's kind of priced some of these freshmen way high up like that, 8K plus, and then you've got Boston down there at 7.2 and some of these others that are cheaper. So it is tough. Guys like Puff Johnson are there, Day'Ron Sharp, Walker Kessler, all these other freshmen that came in and heralded, probably not going to be very, in the mix right away. They'll get minutes and whatnot, but it'll be very sparing, and it won't be guys like that are going to get, few fantasy scores right away, I guess. So this Carolina team is certainly going to be a tough one to figure out. And as good as Garrison Brooks has been over the years for us, and as solid as he's been, it's a very tough pill to swallow when you look at his price tag of 9.3. That's a tough one. So no, that's kind of where I'm at. Leaky Black was the guy that really stepped up to me, and I feel like maybe the rest of the industry is probably going to look at maybe a Caleb Love and paying for him, or even maybe RJ Davis getting some love there with Harris out. But it's kind of how I'm looking at it. Let's move on to the Eastern Michigan State game. Ken Palm has a 78-61 in favor of Michigan State. Their tempo rankings 162, EMU is 271. This is a Michigan State team that is going to look quite different. It's going to be weird watching their games and not seeing Cassius Winston on the court or Xavier Tillman. You're so used to seeing those key cogs in the program. It just seems weird, but I don't think there's going to be a big drop off. I don't think they're going to suddenly just panic and not know how to play. Rocket Watts, who's way too high on DraftKings, is priced at 8.4. Rocket Watts is going to make a big step this year. He may earn that 8.4 tag, and we may be talking in the next couple of weeks about playing him at that tag, but I'm not going to start off with him at 8.4, so I want to get that out of the way. But I do like his prospects for the season. I do want to talk about Josh Langford there at 7.5. I think he probably is a GPP play instead of a pure fade, just because people are going to be scared. He hasn't played a full game since December 2018. His foot injury just will not go away. Seems like he's going to be good to go, though, now. When fully healthy, he's right around a 15-point scorer. A very lethal three-point shooter, shot over 40%. Just a good scorer overall. It was tough for them to lose him. So if he can give them anything with all this talent that Michigan State has, on the second-year sophomore guys and even bringing in guys like A.J. Hoggett or Matty Sissoko, they'll be happy. He doesn't have to be that 15-point scorer this year, I don't think. He just has to give them something and be on the court. What does that mean for fantasy? He's more of a tournament play because he could get hot and pay off these prices, but they did price him a little higher than I want to play, especially in cash. The guy that I would certainly look at for my cash exposure from the Spartans is Joey Hauser. Marquette transfer eligible now. He's 6'6". Some people might say it's a little high, but I think that, Michigan State, they got a lot of front court players, so I get it. But this is an Izzo guy. Izzo loves him. He gushes about him. They were trying to get him eligible last year. They wanted him on the floor right away. He's a 10-5 guy at Marquette. Didn't get to score a lot. Played with Marcus Howard. We know how that goes when you play with Marcus Howard. But he was kind of a cleanup guy. Did all the dirty jobs. Got the offensive rebound, drew a charge. Do the little things to get on the floor, and that's what you want with a guy like that. You want him on the floor collecting rebounds. He can shoot the occasional three when he needs to. So he can spread the floor and whatnot. So I would expect similar scoring numbers from him, but I think his rebounds are going to be way above what they were at Marquette. Even with, guys like Marcus Bingham, Melly Hall, Julius Marble, Thomas Kithier, all these kind of fringe rotation players in the front court that had good games at some points in the year and then played 2 minutes at other parts because Izzo's rotation is so frustrating. But I do think Joey Hauser is the guy that I would want to target. And then I would look down at like Gabe Brown at 4K, who as a GPP play all the way around. Sometimes he would start, sometimes he come off the bench. He can get hot. Izzo likes to ride the hot hand with some of these guys, so be advised about that if you plan on using any of them in cash. And then their big freshman stud that they're bringing in, Matty Sissoko at as a top 40 guy at 4K. I think he may end up being popular in all formats because people are going to see his pedigree and say, "Well, I got to roster him." But I'm not entirely concerned, or I'm not, I don't think that he's going to be like stepping in and getting all these minutes right away and be this big impact player, because Izzo keeps a very tight leash on his freshman post big men. You saw that last year with his revolving door of post men that he played. So be advised if you play Matty, if he makes a freshman mistake, and he will, Izzo may pull him out of the game. So even at 4K, it's not like a lock or anything like that. You may disagree, but I did want to get that out because a lot of people are talking like it is. How do you kind of feel about the Spartans this year?
I totally agree, Justice Local. Totally agree. And Izzo doesn't mess around with his freshmen. They make one mistake and they're out. He's been known to do that. So no, he's not. I like Joey Hauser. It seemed Michigan State struggled all year to find an answer to the 4 spot last year. Like I said, and they just never found it. They got it now. He is gonna be definitely effective in that pick and pop offense of Izzo's. I think Joey Hauser is a great play at 6'6", a great play. Same thing in Langford. I agree with you. I think Josh Langford is a GPP play. Let people stay off him. I'll go on him. Everything I'm reading, Izzo, and you know how much Izzo likes him. He loves the kid. I mean, he calls him still the leader of the team. I mean, that's all you hear about last 2 years. I think he's a good play at 7'5". I mean, he hasn't played though since December 2018, but he definitely has the upside. So, if anything, no, I think Joey Hauser's a play. I like the Rocket Watts call too, but once again, I'm not paying 8-4 for Rocket Watts until I see what he can do. He had some good games though at the end of the year last year though. He came on, so but Joey Hauser's my guy. And on the other side, at Eastern Michigan, I mean, well, do you have any stats you want to run for Eastern Michigan? I got 1 or 2 small plays here, but
basically they only lost, Boubacar Touré to graduation, so they're bringing back, pretty much everyone. They have hit the transfer market pretty hard. Kansas State grad transfer James Love, who didn't really do a whole lot for them, so I don't know how, impactful he'll be. Holy Cross transfer Drew Lauder, who I've seen conflicting things. That everything I saw said his waiver's pending, but then the East Lansing Journal, don't ask me how I found that, has said that he's going to start. But I can't confirm that. So if Lauder starts, he's mega cheap, even against Michigan State, for a guy that, at 3.8 averaged, well over double-digit scores and had games against upper-tier competition last year. I think he only had 2 or 3 where he scored double digits there too, like 15 and 8 type of scores. So once we get clarification on if he's actually eligible or not, he would end up being a must play in that situation. And then the only other guy I like is JUCO transfer Bryce McBride. He was a 24-point scorer at the JUCO level. He's priced at 3K. Just another one of those speculative type of plays for GPPs.
And I'm seeing the same thing from the Lansing State Journal that Lauder's playing tomorrow. I like the price too because Lauder's a shooter. So I think that's a pretty good price. He's the type of guy that can provide a jolt to this Eastern Michigan offense, and they need that jolt. So I can see him playing. Like you're calling McBride, he's a good 3,000. He was number 8 scoring last year in JUCO, so he can play either guard position. Definitely GVP at $3,000, but somebody's going to score in his game. I mean, so this points go around. And what about Thomas Benelli at 3,500? He returned he's started from last year. He averaged 16 DK points a game, so that's straight value, 3,500. So GB play, I can throw Benelli out there. I'll take 16 points for my guy at 3.5. That's pretty much it. I mean,
absolutely.
so I touch. I mean, who's Ty Grochi? I mean, at 4.5. No, I'd rather go to Lauder or McBride or this Benelli kid. I kind of like this Benelli. The more I'm looking at him, he's going to play. He's a starter. I'll take 16 points any day.
Yeah. Ty Grochi is kind of like more comfortable as the third option. They forced him to be the first option when they lost everybody, right. and his efficiency is just in the toilet. So really a volume play, I guess, but I don't know. I wouldn't be using him either.
Great.
All right, next game, West Virginia versus South Dakota State. Ken Palm has this one 80-68 in favor of West Virginia. They're 91st in tempo rankings. SDSU 192nd. There's a decent amount to like here. The West Virginia side, though, is is one of those situations where they're a tilt.
Moneyball.
They only really lose. Yeah, they lose Jermaine Haley, who had some nice games. Chase Harler's gone. Kind of these,
Who's the best
fringe
player in the
players or
world?
whatever. Jordan McCabe's
Lionel
back, who
Messi.
had a really strong
Who's the best
freshman year
player
at
of all
times
time?
and was a non-factor last year. So it'll be
Lionel
interesting to see
Messi.
what he does. Emmett Matthews is back, another guy who had like random 50-point fantasy points in his fantasy or his freshman year, and then he would do nothing last year. It's really going to be, Derek Culver and Oscar Tshiebwe. They're kind of in the same situation as Garrison Brooks and Armando. They're either going to get you that 8-10 rebounds in the first half and be cruising right along, or they're going to pick up the too early fouls. And they're both extremely expensive for you to kind of speculate on DraftKings. Tshiebwe, especially at 8-1, I was hoping he'd be a little cheaper. Culver's probably more rosterable at 7-7 because it's kind of like what his price was most of the season. So I don't hate that there, but it is a risk. I would rather prefer Miles McBride at 6'8". I think this is another one of those guys that's going to break out. You have that kind of prototypical, freshman to sophomore leap that guys make. McBride was a 9.5-point scorer last year. You could see it. There were times where he would take over games. He couldn't do it consistently because he was so raw, but he seems to be getting a longer leash than a lot of these other players do. Huggins is another guy that is like Izzo. If you mess up and you make a mistake, you miss a defensive assignment, you're going to sit on the bench. So that happens quite a bit. But McBride is a guy I think is going to make that next step for West Virginia. And then a guy like Kedrian Johnson, who is a JUCO transfer himself. He's a third-ranked JUCO prospect. Averaged 26 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 steals. So on paper, he would seem like a very good fit for Huggins' system. But we do have to temper expectations. I dug a little deeper because I was like, why wasn't more people offering this guy? He's on a team that averaged 80 shots per game. Now, to put this in context for you guys, because 80 shots might not sound like a lot, the D1 leader for shot attempts last year was Mississippi Valley State, a depressingly bad team, and they averaged 68 shots per game, 12 less than the team he played on. So he was a volume guy. His efficiency was very bad, but when you shoot 50 times a game yourself, you're going to score 30 points a game. So I would temper expectations on him a little bit, but he is going to play, and he's only 3K. So he's another one of those speculative 3K type of guys where I could see running him in a GPP and potentially, if he drew the start, playing him in my cash games. What are you liking here?
Man, when I see West Virginia on the slate, I cringe because it's Bob Huggins, and I have won so much money off Bob Huggins players, and man, I have lost money off Bob Huggins players because you never know what he's going to do. I mean, you probably remember. Do you remember the game last year? We had Taz Sherman as a core at one point last year, one game. I mean,
Yeah.
get these. I mean, I remember having. I mean, Haley. I mean, 2 years ago. I mean, Haley went through his spurge, but he was a big player. But I think Tshiebwe and Derek Culver are both cash plays. They were last year. My problem is they're always just about the same price. This year, Tshiebwe is $400 more. To me, it was always which one do you pick? I can never pick both of them. I mean, Tshiebwe is probably the best offensive rebounder in the country. Double threat every night. Derek Culver is probably one of the best athletes on the team, and I think Culver actually has more upside, maybe a little bit cheaper. But the problem is they get into foul troubles in their minutes, and then they do one thing wrong, Huggins pulls them. So they're still probably cash plays, but they have so much ability and talent. This is the highest total on a slate. Remember, 151 and a half, points. Spreads inside 10. So I think you got to take something for this game. I like Miles McBride, 6'8". I mean, he's all freshman Big 12. Third scoring the team last year. That's a decent price. But if anything, I could almost turn around and go back to South Dakota to Noah Friedel at 4,800. Now he's coming back. He's a starter on the highest total game on the slate. He's $4,800. Averaged 21.9 DK points last year. The last 4 or 5 games last year, if I remember right, he got hot. He was scoring like 30, 35 DK points a game. He's only 4'8", so he's a very unknown guy. I could use him as a cash value. No problem. You got 2 fast-paced teams. Even though West Virginia is a very good offense, this is going to be a fast-paced game. A lot of points can be scored. So I really don't see anybody else in South Dakota State that impresses me. So I could use like a Culver and a Friedel and move on. But with this type of scoring, I think I might need one of them in my cash lineup.
Yeah, I definitely like some of the Jackrabbits players here. Friedel is a good call because of his price. Reigning, conference player of the year, Douglas Wilson is in play. He's a little higher priced at 6'4", but he's still in that range of easily affordable. Another guy that was averaging over 31 DK points last season. So, I mean, I have him listed as a confident, cash play myself. Then you have guys like Matt Dentlinger at 6K, who is back. Alex Arians is back at 4 or 5. Those of you that have been grinding for a long time may remember like 2 years ago, Arians was on the slate at 3K when it was like unheard of to get 3K. And he was playing like 25 minutes a game and everybody had him. It was one of those things. So he's still on this team. And then you have their other starter, David Wingate at 4-3. So those are the 5 guys that are all back. I don't have any issues using any of them. I agree with you. I think Friedel is probably the most cash viable. I do think Wilson is in play if you can afford him. And then you got Dentlinger, Arians, and Wingate in play for the GPP because, yeah, this total is very high. Spread's not that, that crazy either. There's an actual opportunity for South Dakota State to take this game down. So keep that in mind when you guys are building lineups.
It's inside 10. It's weird. It's inside 10 points, and that's a highest over under on the game. So on the night, so this is a sneaky spot here, and maybe even a sneaky game stack too in GPPs.
Yeah. All right.
Very
next,
low owned.
Yeah, definitely. Next game, Texas versus Rio Grande. This game's funny, honestly. Once we get to the Texas prices, some of you guys are going to fall over. I know I did. People in the chat are trolling so hard. The Ken Palm projection 79.56 in favor of Texas. The Rio Grande is a very fast team, 36 in tempo ranking. Texas 312th. Now there is one player that I think you can run for Rio Grande and feel okay about it. And it's the heart and soul of this team, really. Javon Levi. He's back again. They've lost 2 of their best 3, so he's back to really leave his mark on this program. Did lead the nation in assists per game last year with 8. And it's a 2-time WAC Defensive Player of the Year, so he's a very high assist rate, which is 47.6%, number 1 in the nation, and then he has a steal rate of 3.6%, high-end defensive player. So he does a lot of the little things that get you quick fantasy points, even if he's not scoring. He had very tough job scoring last year. The one knock on him is he'd have games where he shot 2 for 12, 3 for 14, really bad efficient scorer, but he does enough of the other little things to really, pay off. And the fact that he's only priced at 6'2" puts him on my radar. He's a player that I think there was 1 or 2 slates last year that Rio Grande was on there, and Levi was priced much higher than the 6'2". So I do think even against Texas, who probably be above average defensively team when it's all said and done, but I don't feel like Levi's going to not be able to pay off this price against Texas. So he's the guy. I would keep my exposure to Levi if you want to go with Rio Grande guys. There's really no one else on their team. He's a reasonable 6'2" tag. No one else is anything more than a dart throw at best. So I don't have any interest in those guys. Now the Texas prices I'm talking about, Matt Coleman, he's priced at over 9K. Jericho Sims, 8-9, almost 9K. Productive guys. Matt Coleman, a 13-point per game scorer. He kind of had a really 2 years ago, a very soft season, I guess. Didn't really come on our radars. Then he just rattled off like 25, 30, 35, 40-point games to start the season last year and was like, oh, Matt Coleman's good now. And I was like, I don't know about that. And then, he kind of went back to being Matt Coleman. So the fact that he's priced as a mega superstar, TJ Ford back in the day, I just have a hard time with that. Jericho Sims, 9.5-point scorer, 8.2 rebounder. Another guy, that's going to make another step this year. But again, he's not a 9K guy, at least not yet. That may change as the season goes on, but I'm not starting out paying that kind of price for him. I'd much rather dip down into the mid 7Ks, play a guy like Courtney Ramey, who I'm still not super comfortable playing him at that price. He showed flashes of brilliance last year. I do think he's a fine play at 7.6 if you want to run him in GPPs. Jace Fabrice is out with an injury, so there's, shots and minutes in that guard position for Ramey to play. Greg Brown was a guy that I really had hoped was going to be cheaper. He's 8K to start, and I still think he might be playable. He had 26 and 13 in high school. Top 10 recruit, going to be kind of a juggernaut. He's going to fit that role of Jared Allen, Mo Bamba, Jackson Hayes, a guy that comes on the scene that, is a high recruit, but maybe people aren't expecting him to be a one-and-done type of player, and he's going to end up being like one of those guys and just start tearing it up. Texas has a very good tradition of sending big guys to the NBA. So I do think Brown is going to have a monster season. I am in on him at that price of 8K. Maybe not everywhere, but I want exposure somewhere, especially against this Rio Grande team. And then the other player for Texas that I like is Andrew Jones. This is a kid that had leukemia just a couple of years ago, beat that, got on the floor last year. Shaka says that they need him when he's on the floor to shoot whenever, and every time he touches the ball, he wants him shooting. So he's giving him the green light. So anytime you got a guy that's coming in at 6'2", again, we would have liked him a little cheaper, but he's going to be playing big minutes. Fabrice is out. There's minutes to go around for the wing and the guard spots. And Andrew, like I said, has the green light to shoot. So any guy that is going to be chucking it when he's out there is a guy that we want to consider, especially when Texas may very well score 80+ points tomorrow. How are you seeing this game?
Yeah, and I think I like Andrew Jones out of Texas. Going to run out 3 guards. Shaka got a little reprieve, winning 5 of his last 6 there, and a lot of that was because of Andrew Jones. I mean, he got real hot at the end of the season last year, and if I remember right, he was like hitting like 50% of his shots. So it's a good price. Matt Coleman, I will never play him at that price. Courtney Ramey, to me, he's just garbage. He's a GBP player. You can never get these guys right. I like Jericho Sims. If he's $7,000, he's injury plaque, but he can rebound and block shots. We've won some games with Sims. But if anything, I guess it's going to be Andrew Jones, and I could probably see using Andrew Jones probably more as a GPP play, though, not a cash play. And I like your call on Greg Brown. I was going to say the same thing. I see him as another Jackson Hayes. Texas knows what they're doing with these NBA-type guys. I mean, different type of level, but Mo Bamba, Jarrett Allen, these guys. But this kid was number 8 recruit on 24/7, so they call him a dunk machine. So I think 8,000 is a pretty reasonable price for him, and he's maybe one of my top lineups. But going back to Javon Levy, I like that price of 6'2". I like him because he's a stat sheet filler. He's the 2-time defensive player of the year. Maybe it's okay, we're not going to play as he plays defense, but he averaged 11.5 points a game, 7.9 assists, 3.3 rebounds, 2.4 assists, shot 38% from the 3. That's all DFS points. Is he a main lineup type? No, but I'm gonna have shares of Javon Levy in my teams. I think he's gonna be very low owned. But you got to get somebody from Texas in there. I mean, this is probably the worst defensive team on the slate, Texas Rio Grande. So somebody's gonna be scoring, and I can't pay $9,000 for Matt Coleman. So me, I guess it's gonna be Andrew Jones, or let's go up to Greg Brown and see what he can do. We might get lucky with this Brown kid. But said if he's Jackson Hayes, I'm gonna roll with him.
Absolutely. All right, next game on the slate, Clemson versus Mississippi State. Clemson projected to score 71, Mississippi State 67. Tempo rankings for Clemson's 311, Mississippi State 263. This is a game that has guys that are priced maybe a little high for our comfort level, especially on the Clemson side. Amir Sims is a very solid player, but he's another one of those kind of tilt guys where he doesn't get the ball enough at times, and I don't think he's going to pay the salary off because he doesn't have control over getting the ball. He's going to have to get a lot of rebounds and block shots and steals to get there, because guys like John Newman and Alamir Dawes and now Nick Honor comes in from Fordham. These guys are all chuckers, and they don't like to pass to him very much. And I've had Sims in great matchups before in the past and been just tilting my face off because they're not giving him the ball. So it's just going to be really tough for you to justify paying that price for Sims. I do think of all the Clemson guys, not named Nick Honor, he's 6'3", which is fine. I was hoping he'd be cheaper because I think he's going to be really good. But I think a guy like Alamir Dawes at 4'9", I think is probably playable. I'm leery about it, but I do think he's going to be okay. He did average 9 points a game last year. Decent on his assists. I think his numbers are going to go up across the board. And then everybody thinks John Newman is going to make that next step, which he probably will. But his price is a little high to start out there in the mid upper 5-6K range, where I think Dawes is just a little more able to get value at his price more consistently. So that's kind of the Clemson guys. Everyone else on Clemson is just okay. They've had Clyde Trapp forever. He is always a guy that fills in when somebody's hurt, and you start him because he's cheap, but he seems to be getting worse by the day. And then Mississippi State, they've lost a ton. Reggie Perry's gone, Tyson Carter, Nick Weatherspoon, a personal favorite of mine, and then Robert Woodard is gone. So that's not going to be easy for any team to replace, let alone a team like Mississippi State that is okay at recruiting, but they don't bring in major recruits that often. They do bring in 4-star recruit Davon Smith, who is 6'5" to start out. I do think he's playable at that price from everything that I've seen and read on him, and the coach speak, message boards, whatever have you. A lot of smart people around the country think he's going to become one of the SEC all freshman teams easily. Could be one of the more exciting fantasy players in the conference as well. So I think Davon Smith at 6'5" is kind of the guy I'm honing in on. Some people like Iverson Milinar, DJ Stewart. These are guys that showed flashes last year. I do want to see them more, a couple games this year before I start getting into really rostering them. And then they do get a waiver for Alabama transfer Javion Davis. So he'll feature heavily into this rotation right away. And then there's people paying up for Abdul Ado, who I don't hate it, but Ado he can be a stiff on the offensive end. He blocks a lot of shots and rebounds, and he can quickly get you 20+ fantasy points because of that. But I'm not sure that I'm ready for me to be paying, this price of 6'1" for Ado, and I know he's going to be starting to be 7K and 8K if things crack right. So I like Ado more at the 4.5, 4.7 range, but I guess I'll have to start adjusting to life after Reggie Perry. How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, starting with Clemson, Amir Sims. He's broken my heart more than you said. He's a tilt captain. Yeah, he led the team in assists, points, rebounds, all that. But he's got such a high floor. He's got such slate breaking upside. Remember that game last year against North Carolina, the overtime game in January? I mean, first time they ever won in Chapel Hill. He went crazy. He had like 20 points and 8 rebounds, 6 assists, I think it was. But Sims, I can't play him in cash because every time I play him, he just does absolutely nothing when I play him. So he's a boom or bust play for me. I love Nick Honor from the Fordham kid, sharpshooter. I like him. Like you're right, though, if he was 5,000, I'd be playing him. 6'3" is probably a little bit too high. Dawes, I think, is ready to make a move, though. I like that price, 4,900. He is the primary point guard. He did have a share of mistakes last year. He had a pretty bad turnover ratio, but that's all going to, improve with time as he gets better. So there's nobody on this team I'm playing in cash. Sims, if any, well, I guess Dawes. I guess Demir Dawes could be a cash play at 4.9. I guess he can be. Mississippi State, Devon Smith. I do like the price 6'5". He's just up right in that guard. He's got game changing speed. Julian Johnson, JPP play. Jalen Johnson, 7,200 transfer from Louisiana. Said he's 1,000-point scorer though. One last player to keep an eye on, I think at 3.5 is Tolu Smith, because stepping in for Perry, I hearing he may start, but at 3,000, he's a Western Kentucky transfer, right? 3,500 doesn't even much make value. So if Tolu Smith starts, you need somebody at that price. You might as well take a guy that's starting in a game like this and get some points.
Yeah. Over on FanDuel, I want to look over there too for our FanDuel folks.
Smith
is only 4. He's only 4.2. Yeah, 4.2. So that price for him there. Molinaro at 4.4. Those are all playable, prices for those guys right away. Even Jalen Johnson, who is a Louisiana transfer at 5.9 on FanDuel, is a pretty strong play there. You see 7.2 on DraftKings, which is a really difficult price to pay. Is a fine, GPP play at that price. Grad transfer kind of holds major appeal to me. If he was cheaper, he averaged 15 and 6 a season ago, so it'll be kind of interesting to see how he shakes out. But FanDuel has definitely priced some of these guys way cheaper. So if you play on both, or you're a FanDuel guy, some of these players that we're kind of on the fringe about, or we're saying are high price but we like, and you see them being under 4.5, and you need to lock them in. So I'm going to go back and forth to the games. So we're now hitting some games that are on FanDuel, so that is one of them, just so you guys are aware. Next game I want to talk about is Villanova Boston College. This is on both. Ken Palm has a 76-64 in favor of Villanova. The tempo rankings for Nova is 303. BC's 115. This Villanova squad is one of my picks. They're loaded. They're one of my picks for the Final Four. I definitely gotta pick them for a Final Four. Just looking up, from they have a really nice 6 to 7 man roster, and that's the teams that I like. They're good for DFS. They're good overall. Their rotation. They usually make deep runs. They don't need to have this 11-man rotation that screws everything up. You also don't want a team that's only playing 5 or 6 guys because they get tired. They did lose Sadiq Bey. I know it's a pretty significant loss, but you're bringing back most of your other scoring. Colin Gillespie, 15-point scorer. Jeremiah Robinson Earl is an 11-point scorer. Jermaine Samuels, another 11-point scorer. Justin Moore, who is one of those freshman to sophomore guys I think will make a big jump, was a 12-point scorer. And then Cole Swider, who's kind of just like that, clean up the board, ugly type of player. I do like Tulane transfer Caleb Daniels. He's eligible now. He averaged 17 points for Tulane. I do think he's going to come right in and play big minutes and be a big-time scorer for them. Brian Antoine has been talked about being a breakout sophomore. He's injured again. Go figure. It's another one of those guys that's potentially going to be injured all the time. He's out. Demir Cosby Roundtree is also out. So they're kind of without some of their meat on the bench. And I think that Daniels and those starting five, which looks like it's going to be Swider, Moore, Samuels, JRE, and Gillespie with Daniels off the bench, those six are going to play a lot in this game. So I know that price-wise for Villanova, you're looking at, Gillespie at 8.7 and JRE at 8.6, which seems ludicrous. You might be playable if they're going to play the whole game. And then Jermaine Samuels at 7K is probably my favorite play of the group in terms of starters. And then Caleb Daniels at 5.7. Why don't you talk a little bit about your Nova guys, and then we'll get into Boston College and some of the FanDuel pricing for this game.
All right, and I don't have much to say on Boston College. I'm playing no one. I like the backcourt with Tabs and Heath. I think it's a good backcourt, but I have no interest in Boston College. I do think you're seeing two of the better backcourts in the nation going today, because Tabs and Heath are good, and I really think Gillespie and Justin Moore make up probably one of the best right now, especially with Sadiq Bey gone. I mean, Moore is going to take on a bigger offensive role. I like Moore's price at 6,100. I think he's a cash play. Came on late last year, ended up starting like the last 10 games. I expect a huge jump from this kid this year. He was playing almost 35 to 40 minutes in his last 10 games. So I like that, averaging 27.5 DK points. If he can do that at $6,100, we're good. So Moore, I'm looking at Moore could be one of my guards in my main lineup at that price. And like you said, Jermaine Samuels is probably my favorite play, 7,000. Starter last year. Strong forward. To me, he's a stat sheet filler. He can be cash or GPP, maybe more GPP leaning, but I wouldn't argue anybody if it's in their cash games. I don't have to talk about Gillespie. I mean, Colin Gillespie is one of the best the way he does. 8,700. I figured he'd be in the nines, though, like 9.2 or 9.3, so I guess he's playable. But if I'm going to use anybody, I'm probably going to go on Justin Moore at 6.1. He's my top play, and Samuels at 7.
Yeah, I like that too. Looking at FanDuel, JR is more reasonable at 6.5, Samuel's 6.1, Moore is 5.7 there, and then Daniel's down at 5.1. So any of those guys that we've kind of mentioned that we like are certainly going to be playable there. Now Boston College, the problem with Boston College, because they're going to have some good plays, they're going to be super deep. Nick Popovich is gone, one of my favorites. The Hamilton guys are gone. So they're missing quite a bit of some production they had, but they hit the transfer market hard. They are returning Jay Heath, who you mentioned, a 13-3 guy last year. Stephon Mitchell, who does everything but score points. The guy will get 15 rebounds, 5 blocks, and 10 assists, but not score. So he's a really solid play because of his peripherals. And then you've got Winston Tabbs, who missed pretty much all of last season, 32 games, parts of the season before with an injury. He is a budding superstar. If he could just stay healthy, people would be talking about him as a first-team All-American in the ACC because he's that good. So hopefully he can stay, semi-healthy. Now, the group of transfers they're bringing in is pretty decent. McCall Ashton Langford from Providence. He's a highly rated recruit out of Providence, so if he's going to be in the mix to play major minutes, he's only 4.7, so I could see using him. They do have Lehigh transfer James Karnick, scored 12 and 7 last year. Rider transfer Frederick Scott, who's a 13-5 guy. Rich Kelly out of Quinnipiac, who's averaged 17 points. And then Southern Utah transfer Andre Adams, who was a 9 and 6 guy. So they're bringing in all these different pieces that are mostly grad transfers to kind of, patchwork fill their roster because they're not bringing in a ton of freshmen. At the end of the day, it's Boston College. They did pull some nice, guys. Jay Heath was a nice pull at the end of the day. But I think they're going to be doing this grad transfer thing for a little while here. And their coach kind of benefited from the lack of uncertainty, or I shouldn't say lack of, I should say the total uncertainty of COVID and everything, because I think he would probably have gotten fired. So he's pretty lucky that this is going on because he's been doing a pretty piss poor job for DC. But those are the names to kind of be aware of. If Tabbs is a guy that you want some GPP shares of, go for it. I do think Maul, who is Makai Ashton Langford, we usually call him Maul, is probably my favorite play. And then a guy like Jay Heath at 6K, is pretty decent for GPP. Rich Kelly at 3-4 is in play too. I mean, he's a 17-point scorer.
Who's
He's
the
not going
best
to be
player in the
asked to do
world?
that for BC, but
Lionel
if this
Messi?
ends up getting out of
Who's the
hand
best
or
player of
Boston
all
College
time?
they're just not meshing. Rich
Lionel
Kelly might just come
Messi?
in and start chucking at 3-4. He hits a couple threes, a couple assists, 3 or 4 rebounds. He's going to be crushing his value. So keep him in your scopes there for a little bit at that price. Next game to talk about here is Georgia State versus Georgia Tech. This one has a 77-71 favor of Georgia Tech Ken Pom projection. Two fast tempo teams. Georgia Tech 92nd in tempo ranking, Georgia State 30th. My cover boy for this article, I went a little different route because, people are going to be using, Caleb Love and Gillespie as their cover boys for content. That's fine. I went with Kane Williams. We like the mid-major, low-major guys, studs. That's just kind of been our calling card for many years. So Kane Williams, 6-1 on DraftKings. He's an absolute lock. This is the number one play of the slate for me. Even if he ends up being a bust, it's a play that you got to run. He's a 15-point scorer, 5 rebounds, 4.5 assists, almost 2 steals a season ago. Just a very strong play. I figure he's probably going to be a popular play when it's all said and done. This is an experienced roster. Georgia Tech is pretty experienced in their own right, but we know they're capable of having blowout games. We know who their coach is, and they could very well lose this game. So it's another close spread, fast-paced game, going to be a lot of points. If you want to kind of leverage off of a more chalkier play like Kane Williams and use somebody like Justin Roberts or Corey Allen, those are kind of their other. They both scored 13.5 points. They make nice leverage pivots because they're going to be in the mix for scoring points as well. They kind of run that 3-headed monster there. They do have Georgia transfer JoJo Toppin. He is not related to the Toppin family. And then Memphis transfer Ryan Boyce, who came over with that class that Penny brought in last year. He didn't get off the bench, couldn't get any time with all those guys, so he moved over here to Georgia State. Figures to be in the mix right away. So I like this Georgia State team to pull an upset. If you're on the betting side of things and you're looking for maybe a nice value bet, I think Georgia State would be a fairly solid play. So I know you're on board with me for Kane Williams. What else you got here?
Yeah, to me, this is DFS goodness right here. This game, second highest total, closest spread. It's a -6. I just think you can load up on DFS here. I love Kane Williams. He's one of my top plays too. He's a slasher, leads the team, everything, usage, assist rate, all that kind of stuff. So I don't have to. You said enough about him, but he's a top play. I believe it too. Price per dollar at 6.1, and you can play. All these guys are so cheap. Justin Roberts at 5-1, right? Corey Allen, Nelson Phillips, Jalen Thomas. You can play all these guys, especially in GBPs. Corey Allen at $4,900 was in double figures, 21 different games. So Justin Rubin's 44% from 3-point line. So these are all definite GPP plays, but get Williams in there. On the other side, Georgia Tech, this DeVoe Jose Alvarado combo is one of the best in the nation. Also, we have some real good backcourts going tomorrow night. You got two price. They're both, kind of mid to high. DeVoe is 8,000, Alvarado 8.5. But those two accounted for a third of the points, a third of the steals, and a third of the assists on that whole team. But if I'm going to take either of them, I'm going to take Jose Alvarado, I think. Second leading scorer. I think he's probably a safer floor than Devo. To me, he's a cash play. Devo's more of a GPP play. I like Alvarado a lot tomorrow. Probably going to be on one of my second. I usually make 2 main lines. Probably going to be on my second team. I'm not sure if he's going to be on my first team or probably my second team. But there's going to be a lot of points scored in this game. You need a piece of it. Probably if you're going to use Kane, I don't think you need 2 guys. But also Moses Wright, 23 double-digit scoring games last year. He's 7,900. If these guys are a little bit cheaper, I would just be all over them. Jordan Usher is my last play at 5,900. USC transfer a couple years ago. He had a decent season last year, almost 8 points a game, 4 rebounds. But yeah, I think you got to get a piece of this Devo Alvarado, one of them. I've been burned by these guys too many times in GPPs last year. I'm not going to get burned again. So they're going to be one of my main lineups. Probably Alvarado, though, like I said.
Yeah, both Alvarado, what you're going to get, like you said, a much safer floor. Devo's going to have more spikes in his game with a lower floor. I think Devo's going to be another one of those guys who keep mentioning, making these steps. They're on the brink of greatness, and I think Devo's going to be one of those guys who makes that next step. But yeah, Alvarado at this stage of the game is certainly more safe. Let's go to UCLA, San Diego State, and then we'll cover the Rhode Island game and get on out of here. Ken Palm has this one very close, 67-66 in favor of San Diego State. Tempo ranking for SDSU is 314th, UCLA 344th. UCLA, I'll come back to them and I'll save them. You can talk about them. Let me talk about San Diego State for a minute. They're going to be without superstar Malachi Flynn. He was a guy that I played all the time. I know you probably did as well. You kind of just paid that $8K price for him and just rolled him out there because there was more often than not he was good for that 4X number in cash every single game. They're also losing, KJ Fegan and Yanni Wetzel to graduation, a couple of transfers. So there's really three key pieces to a stellar team. But they're bringing in a lot of different guys, and they have a lot of returning and a couple of newbies transfers. The main transfer that they're going to lean on is CS Northridge grad transfer Terrell Gomez. He's a bucket getter, certifiable. And really, honestly, few do it better than him at that mid-major level he was at. And I think he's going to do just fine in the Mountain West. He averaged just under 20 points a game a season ago, and that was with Diane Lamine, who is a superstar from Northridge. Playing next to him, scoring 20 points a game is a pretty big accomplishment. Shot 44% from long range, impressive. 94% from the charity stripe, impressive. And played almost 95% of the team's minutes. So he was out there playing almost every single minute, and his efficiency wasn't going down. That's what gets me excited about Terrell Gomez, and I see that 6K price. We have a real big pattern here on DraftKings, especially of seeing these guys who should be 7, 8K, and that they're from the mid-major teams, and they're all priced at that 5.5 to 6.5 range. And we're just going to keep loading up on the Justin Turners and the Terrell Gomez's and the Roman Penns. Like all these are just, to me, they're very easy plays. So I'm going to be all over Terrell Gomez. He is a core lock for me. I'm hoping that a lot of the industry is going to think that this, up in competition and that UCLA is going to shut him down or something like that. It's just not going to happen. With Flynn gone, there's just too much usage to go around. And a guy like Matt Mitchell, who is more expensive than him, is good 12-5 last year. He's a different type of player. He can hit the three when he needs to, can work the block when he needs to, gets rebounds. He's kind of a bully in the paint, candidate to win Defensive Player of the Year. A lot of preseason talk for that. But Gomez is just going to be a guy that gets us buckets, big time scorer. And at 6K, I think he'll make value on scoring alone. If he's a little higher price, I might be scared because of his peripherals being a little lacking, but the scoring is there. Trey Pulliam, Jordan Shackle, Nathan Mensah, Maryland transfer Joshua Tomia, and Aguak Arap are all names you should know. These are guys that are going to be in the rotation. I have varying levels of interest in them. I think Mensah is the one that I have the most interest in outside of a guy like Mitchell and Gomez at 6K. He was injured a lot last year, but now that he's healthy, I think he's going to be doing some things and he'll be fantasy relevant. So that's kind of the guys to look at for SDSU. Pulliam and Shackle are kind of guys that they'll get hot and they'll put up 25, 30 fantasy points, but they're usually going to give you like 12 to 15. So his price is 5.5, which is probably pricing him out, but he is a name I want you guys to know. We do get San Diego State on quite a bit for Mountain West teams. And there might be a time where he's 4K or 4.5 and you'll play him. UCLA, I know you got some UCLA plays for us. What are we looking at here?
Well, the more as the night goes on, first of all, I'm on Nathan Mensah at 6,000. I like him. I just think he's
Okay.
the same level as Matt Mitchell. He had, I think it was a lung clot last year, right? But he averaged 20 DK points a game last year. So I think he's definitely, he had a couple of games where he had over 40 DK points last year. So I just want to get that. I like Mensah. I mean, not as a main play, but I think he's nice. I think he's actually a nice value GPP forward.
Who's the best player in the world?
So UCLA, though, man,
Who's the best
how many
player
times
of all
did they
time?
really break our heart last year?
You're
We had a
gonna
couple
miss
of
it.
good games where, like Jamie Yaquez came in and did some stuff for us. But man, they're annoying. I mean, they're such a slow paced team, and they think they're a defensive team, but they're really not. This is kind of a high paced game, so I'm not going to get burned this year by the Chris Smiths. I like Cody Riley. I like Cody Riley's price at 4,500. I think he's probably in play. I mean, he got benched toward the end of the year last year, but he still put up some points, some usage. I'm not going to get burned by Chris Smith again. Any of you guys that was, especially your group last year, man. A couple of them games, Smith really burned us, but then he come back the next game and do
Hmm.
really well. Same thing with Jalen Hill. They're all like the same type of players. To me, they're all GPP players. Johnny Juzang is the only one I'm really interested in. I just think he's a risky player. The guy from Kentucky. I think he's going to start as shooting guard. He's got a lot of upside, and I think he's a type of guy that, with that 4.7 price tag, he could possibly open things up for these guys. So that's a really good price, $4,700 GPP only. But if anybody from this game, I'm going to take Johnny Juzang. I'm assuming he's starting from what I've seen, right? But Juzang's my only play there. I'm not going to get caught in this UCLA love affair this early in the season until I start seeing more. I remember Davis Singleton. I mean, how many times we played this guy when he was starting at $3,000 or $4,000? I'm
Yeah,
not getting
yeah.
caught
When
up in that again.
Singleton and he'd be
Jules
starting, and
Bernard.
yeah, no, I totally get it. Bernard, yep. They're kind of viable GPP cheapies when they get to start. They occasionally will get
Yeah.
hot, so I totally agree. Yeah, Juzang, the only thing that would worry me is that he's so shooting reliant. We don't know a ton about him other than that, but he is cheap enough to take a shot on your right. I would say that Jamie Jaquez at 5.5 is playable. I mean, we played him a lot. Everyone in the industry was playing him a lot.
Yeah,
He
we
was
did. Yep,
having
we
that
did.
he had that stretch of games where he was scoring, 25, 30 fantasy points just every slate, and he was just autoplay, and they would never price him above like 5.8, 6K. So it's right around where he should be at 5.5
Mhm.
probably to start. So I don't mind using him either. And I'm a really big Tiger Campbell fan. I know 6.8 is probably to pay for him, but I do like Campbell, and I think he's going to make a big stride this year. I would feel more comfortable using him over a guy like Chris Smith, like you said, because Smith has that tendency to really disappear at times. But Campbell was really becoming a very consistent, fantasy option for us towards the end of the season for UCLA. So I do like me some Tiger Campbell, but the prices are about where they should be on some of these guys. All right, let's go to the FanDuel only game. We got Rhode Island versus Arizona State. Ken Palm has an 81-71 in favor of Arizona State. Their Temple ranking 16, Rhode Island 60. I wish that this one would have got over to DraftKings. I play most of my volume there. I know you do. A lot of people do. But alas, it's going to be a FanDuel only affair. Talking about Rhode Island real quick, they've suffered some very heavy casualties. Tyrese Martin transferred over to UConn. Jacob Toppin, that is the brother of Obi, transferred over to Kentucky. Cyril Langevin and Jeff Doughton, program mainstays for years and years, are graduated and gone. So it's all about Fats Russell now. Devin didn't believe me that was a real name because it's if you didn't play it, you wouldn't think it was it. But he's a very strong play. Averaged 18 and 8.8 points per game last year, 5 assists, almost 3 steals. Returns for a senior season that he averaged over 30 fantasy points a game last year. That was with all those options around him. Now that he's kind of the main key cog to this team, he's going to be doing some nasty things. I could see him averaging maybe 40 fantasy points at one time.
Mhm.
Fill holes in this roster. The Rams have turned back to the transfer market that kind of gutted their roster. They brought in Charlotte transfer Malik Martin, who I am a fan of. He's 9 point per game, 2 steal guy over at Charlotte. Syracuse transfer, I know you know him, Jalen Carey. He's eligible right away. Things didn't work out for Syracuse, but he is a highly rated recruit. Change of scenery for him could be just what the doctor ordered. And then Maryland transfer brothers Mackle and Mackay Mitchell. Both those guys received their waivers just like Carey and Martin, so they should play right away as well. So some really kind of just stopgap options around Fats. He's going to be just an all everything type of player. He's just a complete stud. I think if you're playing FanDuel and you're looking at this and seeing that 7.9 price tag compared to Remy Martin at 8K, which I am a self-admitted Remy Martin hater. I know a lot of people love him. I think he's one of the most inefficient shot-taking sons of bitches that there is. I have a lot of Romello White in my season longs, and I would get so frustrated because Martin and Verge were, again, just never passing him the ball. So I'm very happy that Romello's away from Remy now. I'd much rather pay for Fats Russell in that case. Prices for the ASU guys, Verge at 6'3", very strong. Josh Christopher at 5'2", and Marcus Bagley at 4'8". Also, Holland Woods at 5K. So these are all names that I want you guys to know. Sun Devils, they really only lost Rob Edwards, very inconsistent scorer, and Romello White, like I mentioned, transferred over to Ole Miss. Remy Martin is a 19-point scorer. Alonzo Verge, a 15-point scorer, 31% shot rate. Remy Martin had a 29% shot rate. Doesn't leave a lot of usage for these other guys. Do expect Tayshaun Cherry, Jalen House, and Jalen Graham to kind of get minutes as well. The 5-star, though, Josh Christopher, that's a really cheap price for him. Bagley, too, the blue chipper Bagley is the younger brother of NBA player Marvin Bagley. Getting those guys at under 5.5 on FanDuel is pretty juicy. I think that they're gonna play right away and be key cogs for this roster. Josh Christopher, they actually stole away from Juwan Howard in Michigan, so he didn't come there to not play. I can guarantee you that. And then they also added, as I mentioned, Portland State transfer Holland Woods, scoring machine, averaged almost 18 points, 28% usage rate. I think he's a pretty fine, GPP play. I do have question marks about how he's going to fit in with Verge and Remy. It's 3 just straight up chuckers. So I am scared for these other guys, but at the same time, there's going to be a lot of points scored. So how do you kind of feel about this ASU Rhode Island game?
I admittedly didn't look at that much because I wasn't playing on the FanDuel site, but all I know is Rhode Island took a big hit, man, and I'm a big Fats Russell guy. So if Fats Russell should be in all lineups on FanDuel, no doubt. I think it's a good price. I like the Verge price of 6.3. I mean, Alonzo Verge to me is a stud. He's a good player. And that's pretty much, I agree with you on Remy Martin. Remy Martin is not, you see all the top 10, top 20, preseason, top 20 players and stuff, and Remy Martin's on all of them, seems like. He's not on mine. So.
Yeah. No, and I think that I would much rather play Verge. I do think Verge is a borderline cash core lock on FanDuel at 6.3. I would much rather take that discount for him and
Yep.
just, he may end up being a little bit lower owned if people forget about it, but usually Verge was a higher owned guy. So him at 6.3 and like I mentioned, Christopher at 5.2, I think are the 2 guys for ASU you want to look at. And then if you can get the salary together, pay for Fats because he's going to be welcoming us back to the CBB season tomorrow with a very sick game. I have a feeling I'm going to be having to watch that one. Going to put on a show. But yeah, I think we hit our target a little early because we started a little late. We had to get done at a certain time. I'm very appreciative. We had over 100 viewers at one time. Starting the season off right. We are going to be planning to do these Twitch streams, 1 or 2 times a week. We do have a CFB show that we do on Saturday morning as well. Do plan on 3 podcasts per week minimum for CBB. That'll be on Anchor, Spotify, Apple, all that stuff. As I mentioned, those of you who've been with me for a long time, you guys endured years of Blog Talk Radio. I appreciate it. I know it had a bad quality, but that call-in feature was very fun for us for a while. But lots of good stuff. Pete, I'm very appreciative you brought me over. I'm excited for this season. Do you have anything you want to tell these guys about what's coming up, for the year? Anything coming up with CFB, what we got going on?
Actually, we have a lot going on. I mean, me and you, we're going to have podcasts, 2 or 3 days a week. We'll have these live streams. We're going to have a live chat, live show before lock pretty much every single night. Like we do now, probably usually an hour and a half before lock. So if you're a premium member, you get in on that. We'll have some free ones as the season goes on for the general members. But we got a lot going on next couple of weeks. So it's a good slate. Just remember, it's always the first slate of the year. So don't go crazy. Don't, roll your whole bankroll out tomorrow because a lot of things happen. And if, we're not in the coach's minds, we don't know where they're going. We're just assuming a lot of this. But I think we're in good shape. I mean, we have a much better edge than most of the people doing the industry. I mean, just your article, the 2 articles you did today were probably the most in-depth articles I've ever seen in DFS. So, I mean, we got a step ahead of so many people. So good job on those articles.
Appreciate it, man. And November, typically we have all of November, which we didn't. So November and December usually are the most profitable for us. So as Pete said, take the first couple of slates easy so we can kind of see how rotations will shake out and make sure we don't get burned by COVID and all that. But once we get into a rhythm here in the next week or so, it'll definitely be full speed ahead because a lot of these other guys that run optos and things, they don't know the players like we do and have that knowledge. So we do have like a full run for the next 30, 45 days where we know basically everything about the players and it takes time for those guys to catch up, especially with NFL and all these other sports going on. And we put a lot of time into this. So I think you find this to be a very profitable sport. If you haven't played it before, if you've been with me in the past, welcome back. I'm very excited. But yeah, we'll definitely be posting in the Discord about when our shows are. Make sure you're paying attention to the articles posting daily for CBB, daily for CFB when we have the slates. Lots of good stuff. So I appreciate all the support as always, guys. If you're not a premium member already, we're almost wrapped up with the 40% off discount. So you sign up for your first 2 months, it's 40% off. Ends up being only a few dollars more than what the monthly charge was over at my old site. $6 more for what you're offered, this much more content. a steal. So definitely get on that, guys, and
Oh,
do
yeah.
it before it's too late.
Cha-ching.
All right. Appreciate it, guys. Best of luck. And make sure you hit us up in the premium Discord. That's where we'll do all last-minute breaking lineup news, injuries, all that good stuff. See ya.
Sherman whips, fancy cars, they play the game, but they know who the champions are. Every time we pull up, it's like a damn bazaar. They scream our name, try to get us on the camera. Flashing lights, though I ain't the flashy type. I just push a big whips with the fastest pipe. Can't match his price. Model nigga catch for life, but I still never pay the full package price. And fuck the law.